get to? What now? What or where do you look to for inspiration for character themes, or the way a world sounds, or what have you? A new environment. When you step into a new project that's not iterated, but you are there to help create.
It's a great question. And it goes to the heart of what we do, which is, where do the ideas come from? Where is the true source of an artist's ideas? You can get pretty philosophical and spiritual about it, or pretty practical about it. I love to think about all those things combined. I think there's a huge part of it that is just artful rearranging, or less generously regurgitation of the sum total of my own personal musical experiences, right? Like the 53 years I've been on this earth, I've heard a lot of music. It's all in there somewhere, and it's all being jumbled around and coming out in new ways. But I also do believe there's a divine process at work as well. And that's a little bit more ineffable and difficult to describe. But ultimately, the inspiration comes from the movie. It comes from the story. The mechanics of how that story translates to, I'm going to use tuba in a cardboard box hung upside down in a cave for this one, I don't know if I can speak to that, but I can say that it comes from the story. It comes from a feeling that you get when, as a composer, you experience that story. More practically and realistically, it comes from an artist you're collaborating with, the director of the film, who may have his or her ideas of where they want you to direct musical attention as well. Also sometimes, as we talked about in the panel too, I go through my life experiencing music, and every once in a while I hear something that perks my ear up, like, whoa, what is that? Is that something that I can take inspiration from? Is that something that I can take and make my own and bring to a project? And sometimes they sit in the back pocket of my brain for a long time before it's like, oh, maybe that idea would work here, Does that answer your question?
When you're building character themes and you're sort of just meeting a character for the first time, or especially if you're working with someone who's really an established character, how do you choose sort of what they sound like in a really practical way, instruments and keys and things like that? That's a similar question to the one I just answered. It's going to the heart of how does story and character map to music. Sometimes it is practical. Sometimes it is clear. Hawkeye, for example, the character of Kate Bishop. She's young. She's rebellious. So what does that mean musically? Well, there's some obvious touch points of, punk music is classically rebellious, for example. Now, we didn't go and hire a punk band to score Kate Bishop scenes, but there was some of that aesthetic that we tried to bring, especially to her action scenes. I think there are often very practical touch points that you can hook onto for certain characters. They might be from a certain place. You might want to evoke that in your music. They might be from a certain era. They might be, as we talked about Kate Bishop, a certain age. And think about what are the defining traits of this character, and maybe those have certain associations musically, more broadly, culturally speaking. But aside from all that, and that's a lot to work with, there's also an element of just feeling, of just as a composer, what does this character make me feel? How do I want to feel as a storyteller with this character? And playing around with musical ideas until I feel the feeling that feels right. Do you have any sort of ties where you have to bring in certain themes used in previous times that character has shown up in the universe?
Yeah, Marvel especially. I I relish those opportunities. I love tying things together. I think Hawkeye was the project I did that the most in. You know, the music Alan Silvestri wrote when Black Widow sacrifices herself. Comes back in a couple of spots. Yelena's theme comes back from also the Black Widow movies. The Avengers theme pops in a couple times as well. I love doing that, and I love it when my colleagues do it as well.
When you are one of the strongest tools that a composer has, and it's not really dangerous tools, but just something that is overwhelmingly strong, is the use of dissonance.
Yeah.
How do you, in general, whenever your work is, and you know you want to use it somewhere, or you feel it's called for somewhere, how do you work to balance that? Not like what else do I play in the same scene, or what else do I have before and after, but on the whole, in the piece, in the work, how do you make sure not to overdo it, and make sure to balance that?
It's a very interesting question. I think there's a way to use dissonance that is like feels manipulative and feels obvious. You know, are you familiar with? It's a very old meme, but dramatic hamster, like dun, 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 right? Like it can come off a little bit like that. I love dissonance, but the way I use dissonance is sometimes more nuanced. You know, it's easy to just put your hand down on the keyboard on a bunch of notes that are really close to each other, and boom, you have a scary sound. But I think there are opportunities even in music that is not what you would normally associate with dissonance, like music that's heartfelt, music that's poignant, music that's sad. I think there are ways to use dissonance in those contexts that really add richness to the music and makes it feel deeper than it would otherwise had it were there not the dissonance. But it doesn't come out as like, here I am putting a bunch of notes together really close together and making scary sounds.
In those tender moments, like you just said, if you find an opportunity for it, do you feel a pull or a need to resolve it?
No, I mean maybe sometimes, yeah. I mean, I think my process is a little more instinctual than that. I don't think it's as intellectual as you know, the clip that I showed today on WandaVision as she's like dropping to her knees and the music is rising. There is dissonance all over that. There's parallel lines moving and they're clashing, and they don't ever resolve, and I think that's what makes that scene so powerful. It also ties into the story, you know. The resolution is she fucking creates this entire town and it's an explosion of rage and anger, and up until that point it's the feeling the music gives you is of never ending, never resolved grief, you know. So it's case by case basis, and I don't think I'm gonna put a little dissonance here. It just kind of happens as part of my process, and that's a great question. I will say, I just want to answer this real quick. At the end of Elektra, which is a Marvel film I did a long time ago, the very, very last cue, right as we get to the end credits, I had resolved, and the director on the scoring stage with the orchestra was like, you know what, Chris? We need this to end unresolved. So he made me change the ending to like have a big question mark, and it was like so unsatisfying to me to end the movie without ending the movie. Anyway.
Thank you so much.